あとは5分だけ待って始めましょうか。
はい。
50分スタート。
50分。皆様大変お待たせ。Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for waiting. We would like to start parallel session 5. This is International Climate Regime in 2020 and Initiative in Asia, Mitigation Actions and Measuring, Reporting and Verification System. Moderator is Secretary General of ISAP, Mr. Naoya Tsukamoto. Now, Mr. Tsukamoto, please start the session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to attend this session. As was introduced, I am Secretary General of ISAP. My name is Tsukamoto. For 2 hours, we would like to focus on mitigation measures and MRV. We have 2 speakers from Indonesia participating in this session. So we want to shed light on Indonesia as well. In the negotiation process of climate change, advanced countries are asked to assume responsibility. On the other hand, many greenhouse emitters are currently developing countries. What mitigation measures can be taken by these developing countries is another topic of negotiation as well. Under UNFCCC, what sort of framework has been established? That will be first discussed by a researcher of ISAP, Mr. Dr. Tamura. And then the experts who are directly involved with various initiatives will make presentation. First, we have Ms. Winda Damayati Anstar from the Ministry of Environment of Indonesia will discuss national level climate change policies. And the climate change policies within the context of global warming measures. And then this presentation will be followed by the presentation by Professor Rizaldi Boa from Bogor Agriculture University of Indonesia. He is going to give us a talk on actual measurement of MRV systems. Then, after his presentation, we will have Professor Fujita from National Institute for Environmental Studies to give us a presentation how this MRV system can be applied to subnational and regional level, taking case studies of Indonesia. After these presentations, once again, I want to invite Ms. Kamiyama, again from the National Institute for Environmental Studies, to make comments and perhaps summarize the presentations. And then we want to also have a panel discussion amongst the panelists. For the panel discussion, one thing we want us to discuss is the cost and possible burden on developing countries. Is it really a burden to carry out the countermeasures to fight against global warming? Could it be a win-win relationship or meaningful investment? So this is the question that we want us to discuss first of all. In order to realize win-win relationship, what sort of collaboration and cooperation is needed in Asia as well as the international community? Since we want to focus on MRV in this session, we want to promote effective climate measures. How science will play a role there? What will be a role MRV system can play there? That will be another topic for us to discuss. And as much as time allows, we want to open the floor for you to ask questions. Now, without ado, I'd like to ask Dr. Tamura to start his presentation. Thank you. I'm Tamura from ISAP. I would like to talk about the mitigation actions in developing countries. I want to introduce what sort of international negotiation taking place. By doing so, we will be able to focus on Indonesia. We can possibly position Indonesian case in the international negotiation. So starting with negotiation that takes place, there are major trends we can witness here. Mitigation actions to reduce emission. One thing you see as a trend is dilution of differentiation between developed countries and developing countries. In 1992, UNFCCC Convention was adopted. In 1997, we came to reach an agreement on Kyoto Protocol. There has been clear line drawn between developing countries and developed countries. So it was the developed countries, the next one parties, that actually took the initiative of all of the actions. But later on, developing countries are also asked to take an active role. In 2011, Durban Agreement, Durban Platform was formulated. We decided to agree on a framework that will apply to every country in 2020. So each country is now asked to submit intended nationally determined contribution, INDC. The turning point came in 2007 when we wrote the Bali Action Plan. That has to do with the commitments that can be measured, reported, and verified. In other words, NAMA, nationally appropriate mitigation actions. There are three characters of NAMAs. For one thing, developing countries, for them to be able to voluntarily engage in mitigation actions. That is one characteristic. Some mitigation may be supported, or other mitigations can be carried out on their own by developing countries. The aim is to deviate from BAU scenario. In other words, emit more than BAU scenario by 2020. Mitigation actions of developing countries then will be submitted to the Secretariat of UNFCCC in the form of NAMA. The NAMA are taken as a public documentation, official document. And there has been NAMA registry placed online. The developing countries can register themselves in the registry so that their NAMA will be recognized on an international level. Developed countries can also register their assistance to developing countries. So this could be utilized as a tool for matching as well. And lastly, this will be subject to MRV. Biennial update reports and international consultation and analysis are the keys. How what is summarized by developing countries as NAMA will be analyzed. So these are 5 major characteristics of NAMAs. But once again, when we try to define NAMA, it is very softly defined. In other words, there has been a lot of flexibility given to the definition of NAMA. In other words, there is much diversity of NAMA allowed. So overall rules will be set. Based on that, each country can actually set up a system to promote its own MRVs. I said NAMA can be diverse because of the flexibility that is in place in terms of the definition of NAMAs. Currently, 55 parties and 1 group have already submitted NAMAs to the UN Secretariat. As you can see here, there are so many different kinds and types. Some set up national targets. Among those national target countries, they could set the base year to set a target of reduction of percentage. It could be expressed in absolute volume. Or they could also present a carbon neutral policy as NAMA, such as Costa Rica, Bhutan. Furthermore, some countries set a target to specify reduction from the BAU target, such as Indonesia. India and China, for example, set the target to reduce intensity compared to GDP. 27 countries out of 55 set forth their policy levels as NAMAs. Some countries depicted projects as if they are CDM. Other countries will talk about basic environmental improvement, setting up inventory, emission inventory, or asking for assistance to identify their own NAMAs. So depending on the level and stages of development and also the economic state, all the different kinds of NAMAs were submitted to the Secretariat. About MRV, as you can see, since NAMAs are subject to MRV, numbers are diverse, meaning national MRV can also come in different kinds. And there have been many different initiatives taken, as you can see in this table. For example, on an organizational level, emission on the organization level can be monitored under MRV system, as you can see in the GHG reporting system. On a project level, CDM could be a good example. All of these institutions are quite mature. On a national level, on the other hand, we have emission inventory. That too is already an established MRV system, so it is mature as well. I said earlier, 27 countries set forth policy-level norms. For this policy-level norms, MRVs lack internationally recognized standards and guidelines, so this will be the area for future research and study. So what is the purpose of MRV? The accuracy level that is required for MRV differs depending on the purpose. Could it involve penalty when it is not complied? Could it be MRV for CDM to generate credits? Would it be only for evaluating policy? Well, in that case, high accuracy level is not required. So the accuracy level that is required differs as well. This is my last slide. This is my summary slide. Numbers can come in so many diverse forms depending on the situation of a country. Especially numbers need to be linked with National Development Plan and Sustainable Development Plan of the nation. In order to translate numbers into specific measures, relevant ministries and government organizations need to be involved. Thereby, coordination amongst multiple organizations will be necessary. The Indonesian Environmental Ministry is going to talk about how this has been done in Indonesia. As I said earlier, depending on the purpose, there are so many different MRV systems. So there is a need to build a specific MRV system that suits the specific situations. Rizaldi is going to talk about the national reduction actions and what are the MRV systems, what are some of the challenges that they still face. And Mr. Fujita will talk about evidence-based pioneering approaches that are now tried in Indonesia. I'm sorry, I did not tell you before that I was going to ask this question. Now, each country is writing its NAMA with a lot of flexibility. I understand that, but measurable, reportable, verifiable are three conditions to NAMA. Why these conditions are attached to NAMA in the negotiation process? What are the background reasons for this? There are several reasons, basically three reasons. For one thing, the policies taken by developing countries need to be transparent and effective. Transparency and effectiveness of their policies need to be communicated widely. To this end, MRV could be a good way to do this. Another reason is by introducing MRVs, especially since this is a process of negotiation, many different parties confront each other. By introducing successful case studies, this could help to build a trust-based relationship between confronting parties. And this was introduced in 2007. Even before that, developing countries maybe climate measures. The name was not given, but they have done many different measures to contribute to help resolve climate change, although their efforts were not internationally recognized. So the conventional measures, if they are measured and reported, their long-standing activities will be recognized on a global level. Thank you very much.
Now we have the presentation from Binta-san. You have the floor now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I would like to share the topic of development of environmental policies for sustainable and low-carbon development in case for technology and monitoring and evaluation in Indonesia. In this presentation, I would see the mitigation action of Indonesia from different angle or from different point of view. As a background, Indonesia is one of countries that ratified UNFCCC and has already a voluntary commitment to reduce emission by 26% business as usual, and 45% if there is a support from developed countries in 2020. For the information that Indonesia has already have the national action plan to reduce greenhouse gas and also regulation on greenhouse gas emission inventory implementation to monitor the achievement or result of mitigation action in Indonesia through the MRV system. Furthermore, climate change mitigation actions needs to be synergized with sustainable consumption and production to reduce the CO2 emission. SCP or sustainable consumption and production also plays an important role to reduce greenhouse gas emission because sustainable consumption and production aims to shift the behavior of the mindset of production side and also consumption side of people to more environmental friendly manner. These activities also would bring about the emission reduction of greenhouse gas emission reduction. Now I would be more focused on this aspect. This is the strategy of Indonesia development on climate change. There are three strategies to the climate change. Firstly is triple track strategy, that the strategy should be pro-poor, pro-job, and pro-growth with the pro-environment principle. Secondly is the mitigation agenda, that development program should be firmly referred to reduce greenhouse gas emission and energy intensity from economic growth. The thirdly, adaptation agenda, development pattern that resilient to the present impact of climate change and weather anomaly and anticipate the future impact. This presentation would be more focused the mitigation agenda, especially focus on environmental sound technology verification and registration mechanism in Indonesia. Well, this is the life cycle of sustainable consumption and production from UNEP, that the SCP focus on resource efficiency and cleaner production to the mitigate of CO2 emission. Indonesia has already launched the SCP implementation for 10-year framework program on SCP implementation. There are 4 major strategies. Firstly is resource efficiency and cleaner production of green technology performance. Secondly, criteria of eco-label certification of green products. Thirdly, competency system for expertise and service providers for supplying competent human resources. And finally, the developing and improving capacities of products and consumers, including enabling parties. This is the relationship between environmental policy between sustainable SCP and climate change. That in this case, one of the priority issue in SCP is resource efficiency and cleaner production. Indonesia just brand new established the registration and verification system to the environmental sound technology. So the result of the environmental sound of technology will be verified with the expert panel, and then it will be published to the public with the green list. So in order to publish the environmental sound technology in the website, that technology should be verified by third parties. And this applied technology should be monitored and evaluated by Indonesian government. So that because this is still brand new mechanism, so we need the capacity development on verification technology mechanism. Indonesia policy on environmental sound technology, that strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emission from technology utilization is the registration and labeling on environmental sound technology, verification and monitoring to the applied technologies, benchmarking, and publication of green list technology. The current situation that Ministry of Indonesia has established a working group of environmental sound technology which consists of all stakeholders, namely is related ministries, some like Ministry of Industries, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, and association and vendor, and also the end users of technology. The main task of the working group is to give recommendation to Ministry of Environment regarding to environmental sound technology policy development, and also to establish the criteria on environmental sound technology. Currently, main focus for the registration still on environmental management technology, namely is a water pollution control technology, air pollution control technology, and also hazardous waste management technology. And right now, we are now still developing of technical committee for the verification body to verify such kind of technologies that should be registered and verified. But in order to establish the new third parties to verification body, Ministry of Indonesia Kandradi will launch the Indonesia Cleaner Production Center at the end of the August. The functions of the Indonesia Cleaner Production Center is as a SCP resource pool, as a certification body on cleaner production competency, verification body on environmental sound technology registration, environmental sound technology benchmarking, and then as a facilitation body on research and implementation. Right now, Indonesia, in cooperation with NIES and IPB, Professor Rizaldi now has a collaboration research on monitoring system to the eco-industrial park in Indonesia. Hopefully, this is one of the action that can be reduce the greenhouse gas emission in Indonesia, especially from the industrial park. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Binda-san. So now we have the next presenter, Professor Rizaldi Boal. You have the floor.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So now I would like to share with you about the policy of mitigation and also the development of MRV system in Indonesia, that we also face a challenge but we also see the opportunity of doing this kind of program. So before I start, I just would like to review a bit about the projection of our emission. And then you can see from the figures that in terms of our emission up to 2020, so the main source of emissions still come from the land use change and forestry, and then followed by the energy. But of course, in 2020, we can see the contribution of the energy is getting bigger and bigger. Of course, in the long term, so the focus of reducing emission from this energy should become a priority. But referring to this kind of projection, it is based on the second national communication, and the government of Indonesia should issue a policy how to reduce this level of emission. So there are two presidential regulations being issued. One is the President Regulation number 61, how to coordinate sector and also local government to reduce emission from different sectors, and also the Presidential Regulation number 71, actually related to the development of national greenhouse gas inventory system. And then based on the government program, so which is described in the Presidential Regulation number 61, 2011, so we have to have emission reduction target to reduce emission by 2020 up to 26% through the unilateral action. But of course, with the additional support from the international, so we expect we can reduce an additional of 50%. So in total, the emission reduction target will be 41%. And then, as I said before, the main effort will be focused in land use change and forestry, because this is actually the main source of our emission, and then followed by the energy sector, and then energy and transportation, and then waste, and then the others in agriculture and industry. And these are actually the activities, the main activities going to be implemented in order to meet this emission reduction target. But if you look at the contribution of sector to meet this target, so the forestry and peatland is expected to reduce equivalent to 0.67 gigaton of CO2 by 2020 compared to the business as usual emission. But with the support from the international, so this sector should be able to reduce further by about 0.36 gigaton of CO2. So this just to show you that the forest and peatland actually dominate of Indonesian effort in order to meet this target. So there are a number of mitigation action that's going to be implemented. One is actually mitigation action which is led by the government, so which is mentioned under the Presidential Regulation number 61. So we call it National Action Plan and Local Action Plan for Mitigation. But of course, some of the activities is still not being submitted as a NAMA because there are some requirements that need to be fulfilled before we submit it. So that's why we divide the mitigation measures into two. The one is stated as a National Action Plan for Mitigation, and another one is considered as a NAMA. And then the other one is actually implemented by other sectors, private and NGOs, where actually these sectors could also seek the national recognition for the emission reduction. For example, green building policy initiated by the private could also be registered as a national effort to reduce the emission, and then the national government can provide a certificate for that. And then the other one, of course, the RED Plus mitigation action. So way I said before, if all the activities described in the National Action Plan for Mitigation might not be submitted as a NAMA, because we know that if it is submitted as a NAMA, it is subject for international verification if we got a support from the international communities, and then subject to the national verification. So we have to make sure that infrastructure on MRV is already established within the sector who would like to really propose their action to be a NAMA. So the planning agency is already set up an institutional mechanism how a sector or local government or private who would like to propose their action, their mitigation action to be part of NAMA. So these are actually the process. So there is an agency, there is an institution is being set up. We call it Steering Committee on Climate Change National Coordination Team, it is a multi-stakeholder forum where actually the member of the national climate change coordination team consists of sectors and also private and NGOs. So this actually who will evaluate the proposal from the sector or local government who would like to propose the mitigation action as a part of NAMA. So once it is already approved, and then it's going to be submitted to the National Council for Climate Change, and then submit to the UNFCCC. So based on that structure, so you can see there how actually the MRP process is being done in the country. So we look at based on the different type of mitigation. So one is actually a national action plan, which is not considered or labeled as NAMA. And the other one is National Action Plan on Mitigation, but labeled as a NAMA, which use the as a domestic fund. And another one is National Action Plan for Mitigation, which is approved as a supported NAMA. And then other mitigation implemented by other entities, like the NGOs, private. And then the other one is REDD plus mitigation activities. So for the first three, on the left side, actually, the process should be approved, registered by the Steering Committee for Climate Change National Coordination Team, while for REDD, we also have a national agency for REDD, so we call it BPRED. So these actually the agencies who actually provide an approval for the action. And the registration for the RAD and RAD-RK is done by the Ministry of Environment. So there will be a national register system who will record all the action. So registry means here, it doesn't mean register the reduction of the emission, but it is more than register all the action that's going to be proposed as a measure or to be proposed as a NAMA. And then in monitoring and reporting guideline, so we also, the National Planning Agency already produced a guideline how actually local government and sector should report their achievement in reducing the emission. So there is a MARE guideline. It is monitoring, evaluation, and reporting guideline. So how actually the sector can provide the reporting requirement following the Presidential Regulation number 61. Of course, in the context of REDD, so there should be separate entities which will be managed by the REDD agencies. And then following the verification guideline, as we know that for the supported NAMA, there should be some, there will be the international verification system should be involved in the process. So these are actually the structures of the process of MRV. And this is just to show you the connection between the agency in the country, how actually the Ministry of Environment, we call it KLH, will register all the initiative of mitigation measures implemented by the ministries, sector, private, and NGOs, including the REDD, all will be registered under the national register system. And then, of course, these all activities or plan of action on mitigation will be reported under the BOR, which is part of the national communication. And this just again to show you how the process of reporting the information, starting from sector up into the Ministry of Environment, and so the planning agencies go into the National Climate Change Council. So you can see there actually in each sector they already set up as like an inventory team who actually responsible for collecting all the data, activity data, which we needed for calculate the emission from the respective sector. But the issues here actually the capacity of the sectors varied from one to another, and the energy sector is the one who considered to be the strongest, but the others not really have capacity yet in doing that. And this also again, the process of reporting of action starting from the local government up to the national and go into the National Climate Change Council, and then to go to the president. So just to show you, and we also have the date, what actually the date in each month, where actually the sector and local government have to report the implementation of their action. And this again, just to see how the connection, again, the coordination between the local government, sector, national government, and also the agency who are responsible for reporting the emission as a greenhouse gas inventory under the Ministry of Environment, and also the Bappenas who are responsible to receive the report on the achievement of emission reduction from the local government and from the sector. Because the issue here is actually how to connect between the achievement in reducing emission from the implementation of mitigation action with the greenhouse gas inventory. Because this, to some extent, should be connected, but the issue is here how actually the emission reduction, the emission which is reported under the greenhouse gas inventory also reflect the achievement from the implementation of the mitigation measures action. And then the Ministry of Environment also initiate and issue another ministerial regulation, the process of verification of all mitigation action which is planned and is already implemented. So starting from mitigation action, if it is still at planning stage, so it will go into the National Steering Committee for the Climate Change National Coordination Team, if this mitigation action plan is going to be proposed as a NAMA. So once when it is already implemented, and then it will go into the MRV Commission, National Commission on MRV. So the National Commission on MRV, it is really dealing with the mitigation action which is already entered the implementation stage. This National Committee for MRV, who will issue a certificate of recognition from the national government on the emission reduction achieved by the sector or also by the private. So this actually will be put under the NAMA registry at a national level, also at an international level. So of course, we have a challenge and opportunity. Developing reliable baseline is still an issue there because when the national action plan is being developed, it is really referred into the projections made by the second national communication. So during that time, actually the availability of modeling is still very limited, but now the progress is, in terms of progress on the tool and methodology for setting up baseline is improved, and the government of Indonesia might decide to revise the emission level. But of course, under the convention, it is allowed for the country to revise that as long as we can provide the justification why the change is being made. And again, the capacity of human resources is also another challenge because the local government, for example, it's quite clear that the capacity of how they can really measure the emission reduction from the implementation of the action is still also very limited. And also the agency who is responsible for collecting the data, activity data from the implementation of development program still also have no good understanding how this data actually connect to the mitigation action. And of course, I think there are opportunity that we can have with the advance of the technology, with the information technology, and I think the arrangement for collecting of the activity data, how it's being archived, how it's being stored, and how it's being used by the greenhouse gas inventory team at the local government, also at the sectoral level, can also be improved. And of course, it's very important, another one, the use of the modeling tool can also help to assist the policymaker to evaluate the impact of the implementation of the action. And thank you very much, and hopefully it is quite clear.
Thank you very much, Professor Rizaldi Boer. So 次には
Now then, I'd like to invite Professor Fujita of National Institute for Environmental Studies to the podium. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Fujita of NIES. Well, talking about MRV, as was mentioned by Dr. Tamura at the outset, I'd like to talk about the Durban platform and its extension as we expect the COP21 and the new framework to be created. As we point out the need for the more reliable monitoring system, The under collaboration among those concerned, including the Ministry of Environment of Japan, Ministry of Environment of Indonesia, NIES, Abandon Institute of Engineering, and IGIS. I'd like to explain what is going on as a collaboration of those entities. We have been engaged in such a collaboration since a long time ago, and this is what is called Asia Pacific Integrated Model, or AIM for short. This was first established in Japan, and we're trying to expand it to Asia Pacific region for the past 10 years or so. And what is called the leapfrog, that's what we're interested in. That is to say, suppose that the solid line represents the path that Japan has experienced so far. Well, the Asian countries don't have to follow the exact same path to experience climate catastrophe eventually, and rather they should consider how they can take a shortcut to realize low carbon based development, to realize a leapfrog development, and thus the Malaysians' vision in 2050 as well as the 2050 vision by Indonesia are the ones that we are currently investigating. And in fact, the need for low carbon society is something that is considered as imminent, a challenge. That means a discussion is no longer enough. We have to undertake some actions, as we discussed in the morning. Thus, as the low carbon society from 2014 to 2050, you see the target goal or the goal. Well, usually, if you take a business as usual, then you would eventually you would eventually follow the path of the increase of carbon dioxide, and the globe can no longer withstand such increased the greenhouse gas the emission, and therefore we have to consider the drastic reduction, which is plotted in green, and we do a kind of back calculation starting from the green line. The future target to be set as a starting point, that's important. Whether it is in Japan or Indonesia or in Malaysia, that's quite important. We can expect the transition readily from the red line to green line, and therefore it is more likely that we would follow the orange curve. That means in order to bring it closer to green curve, we have to come up with innovative solutions. That means not the existing technologies, but rather the disruptive technologies or innovative solutions are the ones that are necessary, and also monitoring plays a crucial role. In fact, every year we should see the difference between the target and reality. And if the distance between the two curves are more, that means we are more serious in coming up with innovative solutions. And therefore, besides development of innovative solutions, we need to come up with the effective monitoring to see where we stand as opposed to a target. And that's what I'd like to explain today. In fact, on the part of the Environment Ministry of Japan, it has been working on development of the innovative MRV system. And in fact, this project is under planning starting this year, and we are involved the part of that, and that's what I'd like to explain to you. There are three major components that constitute that plan. First, in fact, you have seen those three. First, we come up with transparency and reliability. We should come up with the future goal, which could be modeled by the integrated modeling, and then then comes technology like the eco cars and eco housing that have been developed in Japan, but whether they could be transferred to the situation in Bandon or elsewhere. That's what is necessary under item 2. And now, compared to what we aim at, where we stand and how effective various solutions are, that has to be made clear by the monitoring. I mentioned about the integrative modeling. In fact, using NIM model up to 2050 for Asia as a whole, if we are to reduce carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas, what kind of measures required are color-coded. For instance, you see the forestry and land use, that including the checking the deforestation, and how the change in the transportation can change the amount of reduction. Those are the examples, and the calculation is performed for Asia as a whole. And we need to further refine the model so that this could be translated into Indonesian situation. That's number one. And number two, in order to move toward the vision, we have to come up with solutions. As I said earlier, a technology that could be applied everywhere and the globe is not something that requires the evaluation by experts. Rather, we have to consider specific contexts like cities or the rural regions, and then try to come up with the mechanism to do the evaluation. And eco-city and eco-town are now put into the projects, and this is one of the conceptual diagram or illustration which was developed for Kawasaki City. Of course, this is not translated directly into Jakarta, Bogor, and Banten in Indonesia. We have to consider customization based upon its own unique the locality. And this is a kind of the demonstration project in Fukushima. This focuses on Soma region, and here is a map information. And you see power stations that corresponds to industrial park, and we want to promote a redevelopment centering around those industrial park. And unlike in the case of Asian countries, we know that the population is declining, and therefore, what if the towns are developed as they are? Then you see that when you compare the energy demand versus energy supply, then there will be the disparity between the two. Well, as in the case of Indonesia, if the industrial park is to be developed in Indonesia, how we should create the industrial park by comparing the demand and supply to distribute heat energy supply in correspondence to energy demand. And right now, those two, in the case of Japan, are not well coordinated in this particular example. And therefore, how we can go about coordination, including the energy supply and demand and production, if the industrial park is to be created, and when this is plotted on the GIS mapping, this kind of initiative has started in various parts of Japan, and this is in the case of Fukushima. Therefore, it is rather easier to see. It is clearer to see. In other towns and cities in Japan, by targeting a 2050, given the aging population, declining population, this is something that we can come up with for other cities. And in fact, in the case of Asian cities, the situation is somewhat different. The industrialization and the population development are going on at the same time. Therefore, whether this could be applied to such a context with the low carbon as an important component. And what if the land use is promoted under business as usual scenario? What could be the carbon emission? And this is compared to the 80% reduction with a compact city. A compact city is currently advocated, but so far we don't see many case studies where the compact city demonstration projects were performed. Therefore, this is something, together with the quantification mechanism, that we propose to offer to Indonesia. I know that only 3 minutes are left, and the third, that's about monitoring. Well, we heard from Professor Rizalti about the monitoring. Well, this is more based upon statistical method, but in the case of Japan, the statistics of municipalities, whether they are really reliable or not, that's quite questionable. especially in the case of developing countries or developing cities, that's more true as a question. And therefore, we have to consider in the context of the smart community where Wi-Fi and internet are spread, and in the center is the city hall, and on the left is the residential area, and on the right is the industrial complex with internet and cables to connect those different entities. And then the energy demand side would be located on the left-hand side. So far, the control and management have been performed in a discrete fashion, but when it is coordinated with that, we can find out how much energy is consumed and how much carbon dioxide is emitted. Scientifically and objectively, this could be made visible. I'm not saying that this is applied to all the cities and towns in Niger. You can identify model cities as an example, and then as a kind of the green collaboration between Japan and Niger, why not use it as a symbol to pick up particular cities or the residential areas and industrial complex? With that, we can improve reliability of data. With that, between Japan and in Niger and between Japan and Asia, the low carbon credit cooperation is something that could be brought forward with higher transparency. The sensors could be involved. Some monitoring system to be introduced in the industrial complex. And in fact, some initiatives have already started in cities like Kitakyushu, Kawasaki, and Yokohama. And they could be transformed to customize the situation in Asian countries like in Niger and make it the public infrastructure for local government to conduct a low-carbon administration. The right is a local government, and then on the left could be the campus of the Bogo University or Eco Industrial Park, EIP, that was introduced by an Asian speaker. And then with that, the researchers, engineers, scientists could be involved to visualize the carbon dioxide emission by monitoring technology. And with that, we can come up with the appropriate designing of the measures, and at the same time, with the monitoring system, we can verify the results, the effectiveness of those tools and measures that are introduced. With this, objective and quantified data could be produced as an evidence to be shared between Japan and Indonesia, and this could be developed into the new business model. We started such a discussion already, and on the left is a remote sensing like a satellite technology. The GoSat is the satellite that is launched by the Japanese government. At present, its precision is about 500 kilometers, but according to scientists, in 10-year time, this precision could be, or the resolution could be reduced down to 50 kilometers. So the resolution would improve. With that, the bottom-up type monitoring, like the specific district area, they could be covered and then connected so that eventually, if you identify 1,000 districts as samples, to gather them, you can produce the carbon dioxide emission data for whole city. This is something that we want to aim at in the future, and in fact, this is shared by the Environment Ministry of Japan as well. And as we, as researchers and scientists, together with administrators, are trying to investigate such a new business model. And as we first start with the future target as a vision, and then we should come up with the solutions that are innovative and at the same time customized to particular locality of the host countries, and then the new innovative monitoring verification system. Those three as components to constitute one set of solutions, which is currently under investigated together with those concerned in Indonesia. Thank you very much for your attention.
藤田さん、どうもありがとうございます。
Thank you, Dr. Fujita. We would like to start the panel session. In the beginning, a person who has been involved with the climate negotiation representing NIS, I'd like to invite Dr. Kameyama to make a comment first. Thank you very much. I'm Kameyama from National Institute for Environmental Studies. I've listened to each presentation in this session. They are all rich in information and messages. The theme for this session is MRV and NAMA in Indonesia. As I listened to the presentations, what impressed me most is that the country, Indonesia, is very actively trying to work on NAMA and MRV system. Early on, as Dr. Tamura said, this was decided in United Nations, and the developing countries were asked to accept the decision made in the decision. So it wasn't exactly developing countries voluntarily started this activity, but now it looks to me that developing countries are actively embracing the NAMA and MRV. Why this is important? If I could allude that to a person, MRV is basically measurement, data collection. So it's almost like a medical checkup for a person. You step on the weight, try to weigh yourself, and how much you weigh. If your weight increases, you have to know, first of all, your weight is increasing. And at the same time, you have to know what would be the ideal weight. And that would be MRV, that is measuring the emission. So in order to achieve the ideal weight of your body, you might want to go on a diet. You might want to exercise a lot. You have to come up with your own personal menu. That menu is exactly NAMA, that is nationally appropriate reduction activities or mitigation activities. You can't start these activities unless you know your weight. So these two need to be linked together. Developing countries are taking initiative. And why this is important? I'm pretty sure you have this brochure. Maybe there weren't enough for everyone. You can download the same information from our homepage. These brochures is the result of the survey we conducted online in January. Dr. Tamura and Professor Takamura from Nagoya University, Professor Nizawa from Hyogo Prefectural University formed a group to conduct this survey. What sort of international agreement can be reached in 2015 was the question we asked to scientists in the same community. If you flip some pages to page 2 and 3, you would see 3 packages. Package 1, 2, 3. And negotiation is, I believe, is so close to package 3. What is the agreement of package 3? You can see this is a protocol. Some countries are against to agree on protocol, so it has not been decided yet. But there is a major sentence that all countries can agree to. There is no reduction target set in there. But on a lower level, something like NAMA, the national reduction targets, will be described outside the protocol. If this kind of international agreement can be reached in 2015, course, each nation will submit its reduction target, but it's all up to each country. There's no imposition from external pressure. If it's Indonesia's target, it's Indonesia that decides its target. So, taking initiative is even more important when this international agreement is made. Now, I have some questions. Indonesia has rich resources. When MRV is clearly linked to NAMAs, even with this linkage, it may be hard to reach a national consensus. Political consensus especially, it may be hard to reach a political consensus to clear a very harsh, difficult target. In order to set up a consensus, what are some of the additional efforts you want to make? For example, beside emission reduction, there could be other benefits, like poverty alleviation, could be one, or reducing unemployment ratio. Could there be co-benefits? And if there is international cooperation, with NAMA, international cooperation can be deepened and enhanced. Are there some co-benefit you can expect outside the emission reduction? And lastly, it seems to me that Indonesia is taking leadership in Asia. I am very grateful for its leadership. The experiences of Indonesia should be presented and communicated to other countries as successful stories. That was my additional request. Thank you, Ms. Kamiyama.
Thank you very much. I think she raised a specific question. That is, NAMA, such mitigation measures, if they are to be promoted actively, what kind of incentives would facilitate that process? That's a kind of question raised. And also allow me to ask some additional questions. Well, all of you can answer those questions, or you can pick up the question that you want to answer. Based upon the impression of my session, the first question that came up to my mind was somewhat related to Ms. Kameyama's question. Personally, I see the initiative by Indonesia and centering around NAMA, and I was very much impressed with such a strong initiative demonstrated by Indonesia. What is important there is that such a kind of the win-win situation is being formed, and what is the key? That is to say, rather than taking it as a cost, a burden, why is that Indonesia is serious and interested in promoting such measures like NAMA? What is a driver for the facilitation of the process in introducing NAMA so actively, rather than taking it as a cost or increased expenditures burden? And also, in Asia, in order to support such initiatives and efforts by developing countries, what kind of support do you seek most as international cooperation? Lastly, the key theme of this session is in question. That's about MRV. In facilitating the negotiation and also for geoscience to reduce, and when we consider greenhouse gas emission reduction, how can we improve MRV? What do you think is the next step that is required in order to improve MRV so that we can actively work on reduction of greenhouse gas emission? You don't have to answer all of them, or you can pick up any question that I raised. Well, and I won't nominate anyone, so anyone that would volunteer to answer a question first, if you can kindly raise your hand and answer any question that I raised. Okay, Dr. Fujita, Professor Fujita, you raised 3 questions, and just briefly, I'd like to share with you my observations. I have an opportunity to visit Indonesia very frequently recently, and for investors and for administrators and bankers, in fact, the carbon is not the first priority. It could be water and air pollution that are considered to be of the utmost concern as environmental issues. And the fact that the environment is now becoming a kind of constraint, which is symbolized by low carbon and NAMA as a measure to realize sustainable environment in view of challenges, I think that kind of perception is now being shared by those concerned, including the population. It's not something like carbon as of the primary importance. We should view that from a different perspective. And what kind of expectation that developing countries have? Through bilateral arrangement, for instance, between Japan and Indonesia, there is a bilateral agreement for JCM. What happens after 2015? That's a question. But in fact, from a long-standing point of view, Japan is willing to offer support and assistance, and that through this kind of discussion, the support extended by Japan is facilitated, and I think that's something that both sides would appreciate. And the third question, that's about MRV. In fact, that's something that I wanted to touch on in my discussion. CDM is one such measure that has been established, but it could be different from one country to another, one region to another. Especially in my case, city planning and city environment is something that I'm specialized in, and this is something that is rather difficult to be applied with the MRV. Therefore, when we consider a local environment, how we can produce a reliable data by monitoring, we have to consider how we can customize the measures like CDM, for instance. So I wanted to just spearhead answering the question.
Yeah, I just want to add what Professor Fujita explained. So in the context of Indonesia, doing mitigation and MRV, it is a kind of opportunity. So in terms of NAMA, doing mitigation, as Professor Fujita said, we should not just see it as just for reducing the emission, because there are many multiple benefits that we can gain from the implementation of mitigation. Of course, we need to categorize the mitigation from a different level. One, of course, with the least cost. We know that no regret option, there are many there, but it is only just some barriers actually block the adoption of these kind of measures, such as energy efficiency and so on. And of course, there are a number of technology which is high cost. And then, of course, if we want to have deep decarbonization, to some extent, we have to adopt a high-cost technology. And in this context, actually, we need a good collaboration with the developed country, how actually they can support developing countries in terms of transferring low-carbon technology with very efficient cost. Say, for example, electric car. So in the context of developing country, probably we can cut the tax for importing the car, because now Indonesia apply 100% of tax. So it's almost, if the cars go into Indonesia, the price double. So in the case of the electric car, probably we can cut 50% of the tax. But this should be also treated the same thing in developed country. So say, for example, to produce 1 unit of electric car is much expensive compared to the normal car, the conventional car. How actually the company also can get the subsidy? So actually, both countries can really provide subsidy in different way. So this kind of, in terms of talking about the technology transfer. And then, of course, when we are talking about in the country, of course, we cannot just rely on the support for the international. There should be some limitation from that as well. But there are many resources in the country which is not used efficiently. So actually, in terms of implementing certain action, just give a simple example, land rehabilitation. So the government of Indonesia really spent a lot of money for that. But actually the level of successful is very, very low. It's only just, if we spend 100 US dollars, actually the trees which can really go into a stand is only just only 25% of it. Actually, it's only just, we spend 100, actually only gain 25. So the efficiency is very low. Now by having this one, so we spend the same amount of money, but the sector need to change the way they implement the program. So actually by having this kind of burden, reducing the emission actually create a creativity of the sector, how they can change their policy, how they can change the regulation, how they can change the way they implement a certain program. Of course, we want to reduce further, and then we also know that there are many private involvement, and there are many also programs of CSR, for example, we have been talking about this many times. But it's only a matter how we can synergize. The efforts come from the private, also from the NGOs, from the government. They need to have more dialogue. So in this context, for example, one of the government also create a forum. For example, how actually this forum meet every month, but to facilitate dialogue between actors, between sector, private, NGOs, and government. So they can see what are the programs that they're going to do, and actually they can see where they can synergize the program. That's the initial step. But later on, when this communication is become improved, and then probably they can set up the program together. But of course, we need to move it step by step because there should be trust there as well. But we can see that this kind of issues actually trigger the country to think more productive and also more efficient and effective. But when we're talking about MRV, so we need to see that from the point of view how we can improve the quality of our data. Because if we are talking about the MRV, it is just talking about quality of our activity data. Quality of the activity data is being collected since long time back. So actually the activity data actually kind of information to make sure the impact of the implementation of development program. All right? So now this activity data is being used to reflect what are the level of emission. But now the ways the data is being collected is not really good enough. The quality assurance, the quality control is not really in place for a number of sectors, but there are good QA/QC system in place for some sector. In particular for energy and industry is quite good, but if we go into non-energy like agriculture and forest land use, the QA/QC is still not as good as the energy sector. But of course, having good quality of data can help the policymaker to set a better development plan, because the key of making good development plan is the quality of the data. So how we can increase this kind of understanding and awareness, the importance of this, and this can drive the change in the local government. We do some of activities like a pilot project, how we can really work with local government to give this an understanding, and we are trying to tap, of course, mainstream with the program from the central government. So this kind of strategy might work well. But of course, we need to do more pilot for this, and how this kind of good lesson learned can be transferred rapidly across the local government. And I think there's another work that we have to do.
Thank you very much, Rizaldi-san. Inda-san?
Yeah, thank you. I would see from the view of the industries that in Indonesia there are hundreds of thousands of industries. Most of them are small and medium enterprises, and the rest of that is the big industries. For the mitigation, for reducing the CO2 emission from the small and medium industry, it's very difficult to them because they still think that that this is a cost, not for investment. So they are all focused only for the compliance, because we have a strong monitoring system for the compliance. So they are not thinking about how to reduce the emission. They only think that comply with the standards only. So once we have a workshop with the industries, that they are all ask that what is the incentive if I invest that in environmental sound technology, which is resource efficiency and to reduce the CO2 emission. So there is an incentive. Unfortunately, in Indonesia, we have only very limited initiative for the incentive. Most of them are proposing to have the tax reduction, and also some of them ask for to make the permitting is easier to get if they invest in environmental sound technology. Also, maybe why the technology, environmental sound technology is still very rare in Indonesia, because we have to have the strong coordination between each ministries, that once the technology wants to enter Indonesia, it should have a filtration system. So the Ministry of Trade asked for how they filter the technology. Of course, they need the environmental friendly technology, but they don't know how to filter that kind of technology. So this is the system that we are trying to develop, the environmental sound technology verification. Also, in terms of international cooperation, of course, we need actually the technology should be for the small and medium enterprises, because they need the simple and easy technology to be applied for reducing the emission, and also, of course, the cheap one. I think this is my comment.
Thank you, Vinda-san. So, Tamara-san, ごめんなさいね。
Dr. Tamara, this will be your last comment. I'm sorry, we are pressed for time. I'm sorry, Dr. Tamara, we want to open the floor. So can you be brief for the sake of the audience to be able to ask questions? Yes, I'll be brief. I will not be able to answer every 3 questions. I would like to pick some. For example, how we can improve MRV. Capacity building will be very important, and data accuracy, quality control of data are all important. These have been already pointed out as important. I want to talk about how to collect data. The inventory of the nation, emission inventory, will be the basis. How can we actually collect data for the inventory? In many developing countries, it is often the case that data are distributed amongst different ministries and organizations, and data are not shared or integrated. Of course, the president or prime minister of the country can actually use top-down approach to collect data centrally. But for example, macroeconomic activity level is utilized for development plan. That is the minimum set of information at least required for writing development plan. So it's not just for the climate mitigation. Having data would help to implement important strategy of the nation. And the data can be utilized to calculate the emission level. That is how we should explain. As Dr. Fujita said, we should not place supreme priority of carbon. The same principle applies to data collection as well. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Now I'd like to open discussion to the floor. If you have any particular question that is aimed at particular panelists, please mention that. And also, if it doesn't mind, then please identify yourself. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Mizuno-san, did you raise your hand? Don't hesitate.
No,
My name is Ohashi. I'm from JETRO. In our case, when Japanese companies, enterprises are trying to transfer their technologies or export their technologies that are environmentally sound to overseas, we are there to support such efforts by the Japanese industry. And generally speaking, the level of technology of the Japanese industry is very high, and therefore sometimes it is rather difficult to introduce them in developing countries context. In such a case, I have a question, Mr. Vinda Diamanti. Some of the reasons could be due to Japanese industries. They developed their technologies just considering their interest, and they just impose Japanese technologies as they are without taking into consideration the situation of the receiving countries or the host countries. That's one reason. And also, when you consider life cycle cost, then it could be cost effective, but especially at the initial stage for introduction, that could be very expensive, especially when the technology is something that is rather difficult for SMEs to understand. And somebody pointed out that the technologies have to be cheap. And therefore, in view of that, I wonder to what extent the developing countries like in Asia are willing to accept such technologies from Japan, with what conditions, and then if you have any opinions, and then we are willing to support both sides to facilitate the trade or transfer. Now, Mr. Vinda Diamanti, could you respond to the question? Ms. Diamanti, sorry.
Yes, this mechanism is still brand new mechanism for the registration and verification of environmental sound technology. I understand that Japanese technology is very highly sophisticated. So at the moment, we don't have yet the specific or the specific condition for the technologies that would enter the Indonesia. So the important thing that, as you know, that we are now, Indonesia are still focusing on the technology on the environmental management technologies, how to control the pollution, water, air pollution, and hazardous waste management technology. So if you have any technologies that would be offered to Indonesian company, yeah, you can have a maybe to the end user for your technology, and then we will do this kind of technology. But in principle, the technology, environmental sound technology in Indonesia, principle, it covers only one is that technology must comply with the environmental standards, even that water effluent standards, air emission standards, and hazardous waste management regulation. And secondly, that technology should have the high efficiency, even in energy efficiency, water conservation, and the chemical usage. And once you have in that condition, we will verify the technology, as I mentioned in my presentation, that the one who will verify that kind of technology is the technical committee, which consists of the expert from the academician, from the end users and association, and other related ministries. I think maybe it would answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. さあ、そろそろすいません。
Now we started 5 minutes late, it's already time to close, but we can take one last question from the floor if anybody wants to ask. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm Ucok Siagian from ITB, Institute of Technology Bandung. As mentioned in the first introductory notes from the speaker, that MRV is related to NAMAS. And as we all know, that the MRV for different countries will be different, because especially for the unilateral NAMAS, because it will be will be verified domestically. But for MRV or NAMA projects that's related to international, probably we will need international cooperations to establish the same understanding about the level of the level of the scrutiny, level of data that can be accepted by international society. Especially there are, because as also shown there are many types of NAMAs. Policy NAMAs, project NAMAs, enabling conditions NAMAs. There will require a different level of MRV. And that's why through this international cooperations by ISAP2014, probably we can promote an initiatives how to establish the MRV for international cooperations, because right now, as mentioned by Professor Burr, there is no guidelines yet in international. What will be, the guidelines in international? It is good, I think, that we can, as a note from this ISAP 2014, that this kind of initiative to have international guidelines, so it especially MRV for international projects like GCM and things like that, that maybe will be useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for another innovative MRV proposal. And does anyone want to comment to this question or comments from the viewpoint of panelists?
Your comment that the new international MRV platform, a suggestion to set up an international platform or initiative for international MRV, this is exactly what the Ministry of the Environment of Japan and our research institute are considering. At least in November in Paris, COP21, toward COP21, we will have multiple opportunities to make proposals. So this industrial private enterprises, University Research Institute cooperation between Japan and Indonesia can work on to make a proposal with urgency. I'm pretty sure that Bandung Technical University can also participate in that. Thank you very much.
I think in terms the presence of the joint crediting mechanism. So in my point of view, it is very useful kind of mechanism how actually we can facilitate and accelerate the transfer of technology and supporting developing country in terms of developing their MRV system. So because in a particular project, for example, it may also involve the development of establishing of MRV. So if it is collaborate with industry, how actually industry can improve the system within the companies to allow for better monitor the effectiveness of the system. And of course, the GCM should also expand not only just at the project level, but can it go into, if we go back into the CDM, like sectoral CDM, on the, how to say, it's programmatic CDM. So it's been actually just looking at program, but how actually this kind of joint crediting mechanism can support this kind of initiative. So need some expansion of the program for that as well.
Thank you very much. 皆さん、今日は
I apologize for getting late, and despite that, thank you very much for staying with us until the end. Besides the importance of national level, which is currently going on, items such as policy measures, as well as the science and technology related cooperation in cities or cooperation and support involving private sector, among others, have been discussed regarding possibility of cooperation between Japan and Indonesia and developing countries, which could be beneficial to both sides. We believe we could improve our understanding on those issues. And with this, I'd like to conclude the session to an end. Thank you very much, Dr. Tsukamoto, and to all the panelists. Thank you very much for your contribution. This concludes all the program for ISAP 2014. Tomorrow, plenary session starts at 9:30, and also we have various parallel sessions. If you are to join us tomorrow, you have to come to registration once again tomorrow. I'd like to remind you to leave the translation receivers on the table. Make sure that you have not put translation receivers in your bag or pocket. And also please note that there are litters, the waste basket, waste cans near the elevator. So please dispose of the waste and papers in those the litters, and make sure to take all of your belongings with you. Thank you.